A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Luke. Mary set out and traveled to the hill country in haste, to a town of Judah where she entered the house of Zachariah and greeted Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the infant leapt in her womb, and Elizabeth, filled with the Holy Spirit, cried out in a loud voice and said, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. And how does this happen to me, that the mother of my Lord should come to me? For at the moment the sound of your greeting reached my ears, the infant in my womb leapt for joy. Blessed are you who believed that what was spoken to you by the Lord would be fulfilled." The Gospel of the Lord. So what is the message of Advent on this fourth Sunday? What is it that we are striving to understand as we make our final preparations for Christmas? I saw a marquee just the other day on a neighborhood church. It said, "What is the meaning of the cross?" And certainly we know what the meaning of the cross is. It's redemption, it's salvation, it's even reclamation and restoration. But what are we called to focus on during this fourth and final Sunday of Advent is preparation. In other words, what might we say is the message in the manger? Because in the Christmas season, which we soon celebrate, we will be focusing on the babe of Bethlehem who is laid to rest in a manger. A manger, interestingly enough, is a feeding trough for animals. Jesus, who is the bread of life, who comes down from heaven to feed his people, calling back his people, reconciling his people. And so we focus on the manger which is the prefigurement of the cross. The wood of the manger will 30 years later become the wood of the cross. But now we focus on this manger. We focus on Christ coming to dwell with us. He is Emmanuel. And so the message of Advent, though, has always been a message of preparation. But what does that mean? It means that we listen to the words of Isaiah the prophet. He tells us that every mountain shall be leveled, and all the valleys shall be filled, and all the crooked ways will be made straight. In other words, if we are to be able to fill the mangers of our heart with Christ at Christmas, there has to be some work that needs to be accomplished in order to prepare for that, to make room for that coming of Christ. As we long for Christmas, we long for the babe of Bethlehem, we long for Jesus, we recognize sometimes that there are things in our lives that prevent us from being able to receive the peace and the grace that Christmas longs to bring us. Everyone knows that Christmas is a very beautiful time of year. Some would even say even a magical time. But certainly Christmas is a time of love, peace, joy, and hope. It is a time of grace, the greatest grace that God has ever given to the world in the form of his Son. Mary, we are told, is filled with this wonderful grace of Christ. And she comes to Elizabeth, her kinswoman, and blesses and visits her in utero with Christ. So the message perhaps of Advent as we prepare the final week of this Advent season is to make room, to open our hearts, to ready our hearts for the coming of Jesus. Sad to say, many of us, on further reflection in our more private, intimate moments, may recognize that one of the things that we have carried around maybe a long time, for years, maybe even decades, is unforgiveness in our hearts. We have been encouraged during this Advent season to participate in a communal penance service or individual confession. In other words, to open our hearts, to maybe sometimes surgically remove the darkness and the brokenness that maybe we have been carrying around for so long. Forgiveness truly is a miracle. With God's grace, we can accomplish this miracle. Many people struggle with unforgiveness for so long, and in the end, they finally discover that the person who suffers the most is not the one they have a hard time forgiving, the one who has harmed them, the one who has wounded them, the one who has betrayed or abandoned them. But the one who hurts the most is themselves, because they've carried around a spirit of unforgiveness for so long, it's actually poisoned them, and it's actually misshapen them emotionally, spiritually. But now is a time to allow God's healing grace to come within and to, at times, maybe remove these spirit of unforgiveness, so that now we will be ready and open, and our hearts and our souls and our spirits will make a place for Christ at Christmas. And so this is the final week of Advent, and this is the message of Advent, is to prepare ye the way of the Lord.